Welcome to the Love Your Inner Athlete podcast, your go-to source for all things mental fitness in sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or parent, you will learn as you join us to dive into inspiring conversations with those who have worked to develop their mental fitness. You will hear from people who have put in the work as either an athlete, coach, or a parent. In each episode, we bring you discussions and expert insights on developing resilience, focus, and mindset. Discover the concepts of mental fitness and learn how to use it to create consistent, durable confidence in both sports and life. I'm your host, Hans Schulste. Let's get started. Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we chat all things mental fitness. We bring on guests who have done the work, have been out playing, coaching, and bring mental fitness into the fold. Today, we're happy to be joined by Derek Plante, who played in the NHL for a while, has coached, scouted, has kids playing at UMD. My listeners know I've done a lot of work with the Bulldogs over the years, and so that's how we got acquainted with each other. So welcome today, Derek.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Hans. It's good to be here. Yeah. It's fun to hockey world's been great to me, so it's fun to talk about.
Yeah. For those who don't know, tell the listeners a little bit about your background and where you played and how you got where you went and what you're doing now.
I mean, I grew up in Cloquet, Minnesota. Went to Duluth, UMD, played my 4 years there. Lucky enough to sign in Buffalo after my 4 years. Played, 6-7 years there, and then got traded to the Dallas Stars in '99. And luckily, I was on the right side of that one. We ended up being in Buffalo in the Stanley Cup Finals, so that was good. Got my name on the cup. Pretty excited about that. Went over to Europe for 6-7 years. Had a good time over there. Saw a lot of the world. Enjoyed our times. Yeah, came back. Finished my degree. I got into coaching at the University of Minnesota Duluth with the opportunity to Scott Sandlin, and in our first year we were lucky enough to win the national championship. So yeah, I've been pretty blessed, and since then I've been coaching some player development with Chicago Blackhawks, and most recently been on the bench with Chicago Blackhawks as a coach, as an assistant coach.
So what do you remember most about your time playing at UMD or in the league, and how do you think it shaped you as a player, leader, and a coach?
Oh, wow. There's just so many lessons you learn along the way, right? I think initially I was a real small player when I was younger, and even going to Duluth, there was a lot of talk that I wouldn't be able to make it or be able to play, and so my mindset was always just to kind of prove everybody wrong and show that I could play at Duluth, and I was lucky enough that I kind of grew at the same time. I grew, maybe my senior year, going into my freshman year of college. So I wasn't totally undersized, still not a big guy, but not totally undersized when I got to Duluth, and I matured into my maturing time, I guess, was when I got a lot faster, a lot stronger, and it allowed me to have successful years at Duluth. And the first couple of years there, we struggled a bit. That's a good player, but there was some battles, just a little bit of the wrong mix, maybe. Some great players, but didn't really work out. And then my junior and senior year, it was pretty good, pretty cohesive groups. My senior year, we were able to win the McNaughton Cup, which was the league championship. So had a great time at Duluth, have some of my best friends from there. So it's great memories.
Great. So what would you say in the NHL were the moments that stood out the most for you?
That's hard. You play long enough, you have a lot of great moments. Obviously, getting to play the first year, everything's new. It's exciting. Just playing in the NHL was a lot of fun. I think, one of the highlights, I got to do the fastest skater at the All-Star game. That was pretty fun. That was in Boston. And I think 96, somewhere around there. That was a pretty fun experience. And in 97, I was able to score a Game 7 overtime goal against the Ottawa Senators. That was a highlight for sure. And then probably the biggest one was winning the Stanley Cup in 99 with the Dallas Stars.
Okay. So and then you beat your old team, right?
Yeah. Which is a little bit weird because all my buddies that I've been with for 6-7 years were on the other team. Obviously good friends in Dallas too, but guys that, kind of grew up with in the NHL were on the other team. So as excited as I was, it was a little bit weird to win it in Buffalo and in front of that crowd that was great to me when I was there. And then obviously my teammates and friends that were also on Buffalo's side.
That would be an interesting situation. to play, play your best buddies and then be hoisting the cup, knowing that that's what they wanted to do. So,
yeah, for sure.
When you think back, tell me about some of the greatest players you've ever played with, and tell the listeners like what made those players great.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. The first couple great players I played with when I was in Buffalo was obviously Pat LaFontaine, who was a Hall of Famer, Dale Howardchuck, who was a Hall of Famer, and both those players were actually Alexander McGillney, who should be in the Hall of Fame, not yet, but I'm sure he will be at some point. Those guys were just elite players, and probably the best one of all was probably Dominik Hasek, who obviously is in the Hall of Fame too, and I was able to be there when he first started, which was an incredible deal. Like, this guy is probably the most competitive person I've ever met. He wasn't even playing at first when I first got to Buffalo because Grant Fuhr was there, and it took an injury to Grant to get Dom in there. But he would be just super hard to even score on in practice. Like, I think one practice, and we didn't really know him that well because it was still like 15, 20 games into my career. And I think he got scored on maybe 3 times in practice, which is like unheard of for him. Like, the net went flying off. He came over and smashed a bunch of water bottles, and we're just like, what is wrong? Like, he wouldn't even talk at first. And he finally found out that he got scored on like 3 times in a row, and he just snapped. So it wasn't like he was the most competitive guy ever. And it showed in his play. Once he got to play, it was the first month of seeing him from the bench. You're just like, your jaw was like things you'd never seen before. He was incredible, just an incredible goalie and a competitive competitor. So that was, that obviously the best player probably I played with.
Did he have great habits, or was he a guy that could get by without them?
He was pretty dialed in. Like, he had great habits. He was always stretching. He was super flexible, and I think he worked at it to be flexible. He wasn't a big, strong guy, so he didn't spend a ton of time in the gym lifting weights, that kind of stuff. He worked on his quickness was great. His athleticism was great, but I think he took care of himself well. Like anybody that in that era, we would go out and have beers or whatnot and had some fun that way. But, he was never excessive. He was always pretty much taking care of himself and making sure he was ready to play hockey games.
And so you weren't like in the era like the old North Stars where they would smoke cigarettes.
Yeah, I think the year I got to Buffalo was 93, 94. The change room was actually the old smoking room, and they had just taken that out maybe the year before. So I was right on the cusp of that. And there was still a few guys that would have a cigarette here and there when the game was off, or, so I wasn't far past that, but we were kind of in that mix of when guys were starting to come to training camp and shape and working out in the summer and stuff, where there was still the old guard that a lot of guys would come to training camp to get in shape. So I was kind of on the cusp of that stuff.
Okay. When you won the cup in 99, it was 99, right?
Yeah, correct.
What did you learn from the mental and emotional grind of all those series to get there and winning all those games?
I don't know that I've ever learned as much in a short period of time as I did playing on that team, of just incredible teamwork and leadership. And I guess there was this disappointedness of winning. It's not always like fairy tales and fun in the locker room and stuff, but it was always like guys treated each other great with a lot of respect, but there was also like a lot of talk and competitive talk, and where if it was something that would be helpful for the team to win, then it had to be said, even if it wasn't nice. Right? I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that it wasn't always pretty or nice words, but it was always effective and pointed and respectful, and everything was just geared on winning, right? It wasn't about what's going to help me, what's going to help my family. It was always about the team and how can we win the game. And it came down to the coaches and stuff too. I think ultimately there was maybe 11 guys in the NHL, maybe 12 guys in the NHL that ended up being captains off that team. But it was even the same with the coaches. Coaches were highly respected. Ken Hitchcock and his staff, highly respected. But if they came in and said something that wasn't jiving with the players, that the players would talk back, because it was truly a collective effort to try to win the Stanley Cup. And I think they knew they could. They had the talent to do it. Mm-hmm. And it was just a really fun experience to like learn and be involved in.
So I got a question about Ken Hitchcock. I once heard that he didn't even play. Is that true?
Correct. Yeah, he was. I don't know if he never played hockey at all. I know he didn't play to the highest level. And I would believe that maybe he didn't play. But he was a very, very smart man and knew how to push buttons. He wasn't always easy to be around or kind or gently kind of guy. He's He's a little bit prickly, but he was definitely a guy that everybody respected, and just he listened to what he said. And if it wasn't working, then we would probably have the conversation. But he bring up a lot of good points. He was a good tactician, and he was really good at like pushing buttons and saying the right things at the right time.
Could he skate?
He could skate. I mean, he wasn't really getting around too fast, but he could, he'd put his skates on. He'd be on the ice with us. So.
Okay. Yeah, I always wondered about that, though, when I heard that about him. And I think I read once that he had a background in psychology. Is that true?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised because he would talk that kind of way, like you would a little bit know what you're thinking about sometimes. So a little bit eerie in some respects. So he was smart that way.
So I got a question about that. Like what you're saying is that wasn't a locker room where like it was always like everybody always got along. There was some conflict that helped push each other, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and then even saying that though is like if there's conflict, it was productive conflict. It wasn't like guys were just saying stuff. It was like any other locker room where you're having fun and jiving with each other and screwing around with each other. But it was game time and it meant about winning and stuff. Like if a guy wasn't doing his job, someone was going to let them know about it, and they had to either kind of live with it or respect it. But I think the locker room was a veteran locker room with guys that really wanted to achieve stuff. And it was just a great mix of guys that really were on board to win it. So nobody was taking that lightly. Nobody was just saying stuff to say stuff. It was, it was something that needed to be done. The guys just got on board and did it.
Okay. How would you say winning the national championship was either the same or different from that experience?
Obviously the college experience is a lot different in the fact that it's a one game thing, right? Like you are one and done sometimes. So we played 4-5 games to get to the national championship games where, like in the NHL, you have to win 4 games every series. And there's a lot more, I want to say more competitiveness. I think your team is really good in college. And if you have a few breaks, you can get there, right? Obviously, if you have a better team, you make your breaks. So there's a lot of comparables though with our team. We had some really, really good players. We had a really good power play. We had the guys that, we had a veteran group that kind of got along pretty well. And we had a mix of some physicality and also some scoring and that kind of thing. So I think, any winning team I've been on has a little bit of all that stuff that can kind of play any kind of game and have success doing it.
Yeah, well, and you had that high-end freshman, JT Brown, who I was at that Frozen Four. I mean, I've been at a lot of them. That was an electric game, and he was outstanding. Like, he was one of the most dominant kids on the ice.
Yeah, that was an incredible. The speed he showed a few times, and his moxie in the moment was awesome. The other freshman we had was Justin Falk too. So, I mean, those 2 additions to our team, along with we had Fontaine and the 2 Connollys, Mike and Jack. They weren't brothers, but they were great offensive players and smart players. It was a tremendous team. We had Travis Alexic, who was a fantastic, like kind of all around 200-foot player that we could put out against anybody, and he would do a good job of shutting them down.
Yeah, he's the one that scored the game winner, right?
Oh, Kyle Schmidt, a Hermantown guy here, won the overtime game winner. But I think he played with Travis, so I think Travis is involved in the goal.
Oh yeah, I think Travis maybe assisted on that goal.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, I would mention.
Beat down the mighty Michigan. That was fun.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because I think we had a new chancellor at UMD, and I think the fact he didn't really know much about hockey, he's from the South, and I think that was pretty lasting him because on our track we beat I think we beat Yale, and then we beat Notre Dame at the Frozen Four, and then we beat Michigan. So those are 3 high-end schools that have a lot of recognition.
Yeah. Did you guys win the Final 5 that year, or did you win the McNaughton Cup? Or
no, we didn't win either one of those things. I'm trying to think. I don't think we won the Final 5. I don't know. It's been too long ago now. I should remember that. It was only 2011, but I don't think we won the Frozen 5. I know we didn't win the league because Duluth hasn't won the league I don't think since I was here. So it doesn't seem to work out for us. But part of that's when I was at Duluth, we would try to have the hardest schedule in the country or somewhere thereabouts to get us ready for playoff time. So
yeah. Okay. You've spoken to the questions about what great teams and championships teams do. Let's switch to your scouting and development and coaching. Okay. So you were a scout for the Blackhawks. For a time, you were the director of player development, if I remember correctly. That's right.
Yeah, no, I wasn't director of player. I didn't actually scout, but I was part of I did player development, and a lot of that is dealing with the guys we've already drafted. And in that, I do a lot of reports and scouting. So I wasn't technically a scout, although we did some scouting. I did a lot of scouting when I was at Duluth. Obviously, when you're recruiting players, the biggest part of being an assistant is scouting and watching players and trying to recruit them to come to college.
When you think about your scouting roles or your player development roles, skill will get you there. But what is the differentiator for guys like beyond talent? Like, what are the traits that colleges and NHL teams are looking for after the talent is there?
Yeah, there's obviously a couple things. Obviously, I think a lot of people can go to a hockey game and see who the fastest guy is or who the biggest guys is. But I think the intangibles that you try to pick up on are obviously character. I mean, do they have integrity and are they an integral person? I think a lot of these things come out when you're watching hockey. And if you watch a player long enough, I think his character is exposed, or you can see it in the way they play. Obviously, the other big part of it is hockey sense. Are they a good team player? Do they make the guys around them better? Like you said, mental toughness. That's the hardest thing to do is kind of recognize some of that. Is when is a guy a hard worker? I mean, you can watch and see that he's a hard worker on the ice, but away from the rink, is he a guy does he have heart? Does he play with passion? Does he, you can talk to the coaches, and a lot of the coaches will always say that they do. Unless the kid really doesn't come every day to play. But the thing that we try to watch for as much, because I think that makes the difference, is the guy that's determined and willing to fight through adversity and have some mental toughness, I guess. And when things aren't easy, can you keep pushing on and to make yourself better when workouts are hard or you have to get up early and all that stuff is tough to really get a handle on, without putting too much time in. And then once you try to find a player that you really like, then you try to find out those details. But those ones seem to be the separators as you move forward.
Okay. Well, you've coached some pretty high-end players, right? Like Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Connor Bedard. What have you noticed about what makes them great?
Yeah, Jonathan Toews, what a great player. I think the one thing is that I was at the other end of his career, right? When they're getting a little bit older. They're not quite the same player they were at one point. Yeah. So they do have to kind of go through a mindset of trying to understand and realize where they are currently. When Jonathan Toews was coming up, and when I listened to the way he was around the rink when he was in his prime, he was kind of the leader. Obviously, he's the captain of that team, and there's a reason for it. He was a leader at every day, held everybody accountable in practice. I think some of those things change a little bit as you get older, and you're not able to do the things you want to. A lot of times you'll still say the same things, but maybe you're not capable of doing those, and it just doesn't at the NHL level. Sometimes doesn't always resonate as much. Obviously, guys respect you and have a ton of respect for older guys that have accomplished a lot, and they should, because they have accomplished it. And I think with younger guys and just the way the game is now, when guys have gotten a little bit older and maybe they've slowed down a little bit, I think it doesn't resonate the same way when you're not able to go out there and do the things you're talking about. So I think words can only go so far. A lot of times it's the actions that seem to matter.
Okay. What advice would you give to young players that want to play at the next level?
I mean, hard work goes a long ways, right? And I think obviously some guys are, you're blessed by being born with some athletic ability and some skills and stuff. And in hockey, I think you don't have to have all of that, but you need to have, if you don't have all that, you need to have an ultimate work ethic and ability to kind of fight through stuff. And I think a lot of people can really build a hockey player with work ethic and doing the right pointed things, whether it's, working on your skating or shooting or, I mean, that sounds kind of obvious, but it's kind of the truth. I think you can do a lot of that stuff by just being on the ice every day and having a work ethic and a love for the game. I think you can build it to a certain level. And then hopefully your passion and you have enough athletic ability to be able to compete with the best players.
Well, when you look back at like those guys like Kane or Toews or Dominic Hasek, like how did they handle like mistakes? Like, or what did you do to move on?
Yeah, well, for me, being a younger or a smaller player, it was always like someone wanted to tell me that I couldn't do it. And I always was like, no, I can do it and I'm going to try to do it. And, in the back of your mind, you have to be willing to just kind of work through all that stuff and never leave a stone unturned. It's hard for me to say exactly how those guys were when they were younger and when they had to grind through stuff. I know like Hasek, just because I was around him a lot longer than, like Toews and Kane are obviously elite players, but I only have to be around them for one season and not even a whole season. So for the most part, those guys I would imagine were extreme competitors when they're younger. And I think it goes to anybody that I've known that for a long period of time is the guys that kind of end up making it they're willing to just fight through anything in a lot of ways, like to the NHL level, right? I think there's different levels of that, but there's guys that just like are not going to take no for an answer. And it's just, they're the ones that are up at 6:15 in the morning instead of 7:15. They're up, they're working, they're looking for things to work on. They're looking for the next challenge. They're just, in my experience, seem to be wired a little bit different, and that's the majority of maybe the NHL type players. They're just really, no stone unturned. There's enough players in the NHL or at any level that just have ultimate talent and skill. And maybe they don't have that same perseverance or, I can think of a few guys that, I wish had some more of that, but they just have ultra skill and it allows them to at least play at the NHL level.
In your mind,
maybe they're not accomplishing as much as they probably you think they could.
Yeah.
But I think you have those at every level.
So what do you think the mental differentiator is between like a D3 and a D1 or an AHL and an NHL player?
I think there's a lot of guys that are D3 that have the mental capability of playing at D1 level. It's just maybe they don't have, the fast boots or they don't have good hands or they're smaller, right? So I think it doesn't always differentiate that. I think sometimes your skill set and your athletic ability limits you in some ways. And, I think there's as many guys at the D1 level that just have better skills or are a little faster or a little bit bigger that don't really necessarily have better mental skills. So I think there's always that combination of all that stuff that has to come together.
Okay. Well, you've had a lot of coaches in your life. Who are the ones that, and you don't need to name names, but what characteristics do the best coaches you've ever had have?
I think if I wanted to build a coach, I guess the things that I like are obviously honesty. And I think at the higher levels, like the NHL level, I just, as a player, I really loved it when someone would actually give me something that I needed to work on, like instead of kind of like, yeah, you're not playing, but you're doing a great job. Like more of like, well, what do I need to work on to play? Right. Like I think the honesty and sometimes the bluntness of is what I like. Right. Like I think there's different people that like to be, sugarcoat it. And I think in today's world, you have to have a more of an explanation and explain why, which is good. I think that's all healthy and good. I think, when I grew up, we just do it. Right. And then that was enough. And I didn't mind that because I grew up in that environment. So I don't have an issue with that, but I like the more direct approach personally, just get to the point across and then let's have a conversation about fun stuff later.
What would you say are the characteristics of the toughest or worst coaches you've ever had?
I think the ones that are a little bit unfair or have a kind of a bias towards different players for whatever reason without really getting to know them. I think sometimes you just like, well, I don't like small guys, so they don't play you because you're small, or he's slow, so I don't like slow players. And I just don't, even though if the guy comes out and is slow, but is a really great player, has a big effect on the game. I think there are players that are like that, right? Like I think some small players can be great if you give an opportunity. It doesn't mean everyone is, or I guess I don't like it when they just say one thing and it just happens that way. And I don't think it's necessarily always the case. Give a guy a chance and
for some reason that you can't control or something about their belief system. Yeah. And I've worked with players who it doesn't matter the level where that happens. Like they get buried because there's some characteristic that they don't like.
Right.
Right.
And you see it often. Guys will get traded from one team to another and all of a sudden they have success. Yeah. Well, it's probably because they probably got to the level they're at for a reason. Now you have to let them show that. Now, if that's something you don't like or you don't think that's going to help your team, that's another story, right? But I think when it's that one level of like, I just don't like that player, that kind of player. I don't think that's fair.
So, your dad has coached forever, right?
Yeah.
Seems like. What are some things you learned from watching him coach? First of all, did he coach you ever?
No, he never did. Like, it's funny. And when I was in Cloquet, the year I got to Bantams, he was always the Bantam coach in Cloquet for the longest time. And then when I got to Bantams, that was the year he took the job in Hermantown as a high school coach. Okay. So I never did have him as a coach, actually. So, but at the same time, I was always on ice with his teams. And I don't know what I didn't learn from my dad. I guess there's just like, yeah, I don't know. He's a great inspiration for me, obviously. And yeah, he taught me just, it seems like everything really.
And did he coached your kids too, right?
He did not coach my kids. So that's kind of funny too. So that was, I think he left Hermantown maybe the year or two before they got there. So he didn't have the opportunity. Or I think he just was like, I don't know. Like he had the 2 championships in a row. And I don't know if he thought it could get any better than that. That was kind of getting to be that time. So,
well, yeah. And that could have been a pretty, a challenging thing to do to be grandpa and coach, but in another way, like your kids were really good at that level and are still really good. So like, no one's going to ever say like, oh, well, they're getting special like favors because
yeah.
all right. But okay. Tell me more about that. Like, what was it like raising your kids as hockey players and athletes and people and having the background you did? What was that like for you?
I probably have to temper it down a little bit. And I think everybody has kids and they all have different personalities. I just try not to be too pushy or too hard. Like I'm not super hard and pushy that way on them. I'm a big believer that like if it's going to be, it's going to be in a way that like if you love it, you're going to put more time in it. And if you want to know more, you're going to ask questions to some degree, right? Like if you're really liking it, and I didn't want to be too forceful for it. Yeah, I think the one thing that we, Christy and I have always preached really is just like, you have control of 2 things in this world. It seems that, how hard you work and how you treat other people. And so that's been our biggest things. And, if you're going to play hockey, then you play your ass off, right? And it's the same thing if you're playing soccer or baseball, you're going to give an honest effort. You're going to give everything you can. Mm-hmm. And then, along the way, if I can help you with some tips here or there that might help you, then obviously that's where we kind of would step in or would try to be helpful as far as the sports go.
Well, and your oldest, I remember having him in several classes over the years, at HP or at Bulldog camp or whatever. And he was always in the front row and always asking questions and always open and just like, and it seemed like always smiling.
Yeah, they get that from Christy for sure. She's always smiling, happy, and go lucky. So I love that. I think that's a lot of coaches' kids are similar to that. I think when they're just around it so much, right? Yeah. Or they're around hockey, and if they kind of like it, they love it, right? They're in. He's all engaged, and it's easy for them to have conversations because a lot of the talk we have at home is about sports or hockey and stuff. So they're just immersed in it, whether they like it or not. I like at those camps and those kind of things. I think they love going to those because they feel comfortable there, and they're lucky enough to even be in the locker room when we won the national championship in 2011. They were just young little guys, and they got to see how people react. I think there's a huge advantage for them to be around those scenarios. So I think that any coach's kid has the advantage of just being around the locker room and knowing what's okay and what's not okay and feel comfortable there.
What have you noticed about, you have this like perspective of time, like from when you played, like, we're a similar age. So like, there's a more old school mindset. You knew the rules. You didn't really ask questions when we were growing up and you just kind of pushed along. Like as you've watched your kids and as you've coached college, pro, like what do you think's different about today's athletes as opposed to like 20, 30 years ago?
Well, that's like everything's probably changed in a lot of ways. From, we'd have to spend an hour every day just curving our sticks and fixing our sticks. Like now they have all these sticks that are twice as good, or the skates are better. Like, so the equipment's way better. And there's so many more people that are involved in teaching skills. And, we've never had any of that stuff. We just go out to the pond and play. And, luckily in Hermantown, we still have some of that. We have the coaches if you need it. We have pretty good people around here. And I think, not just Hermantown, but all over the state. But one thing we have in Hermantown is the outdoor rink still. But I think what can happen is you can really build a hockey player skill wise. And I think that's changed a lot, right? Like there was not the extra ice time. There wasn't all the summer ice time. I think when the season was over, we would put our stuff away and we'd play baseball. And then we would play football and then we would play hockey again. And I think that's just kind of how it went. Now everything a little bit overlaps, which makes it a little bit difficult to be multiple sport players, but you just spend so much more time on the ice playing. And then, it's not abnormal. Like our kids did it too. They play their winter season and they play AAA hockey in the spring and in the fall. So they get to be on multiple teams. And, that in itself is a little bit different mindset than, just being on one team and that's the only team I fight for kind of thing. So there's just a lot of cultural things that are, I guess, quite honestly just different.
My kid is going to be a senior and I mean, I couldn't tell you how many different teams he's played for over the years, right? Like, I mean,
Right. Yeah, I played for Cloquet, and that was it.
yeah.
I was lucky that they had a camp in Brainerd. I would go there and get to meet a lot of kids and play hockey with them in the summer. But that was, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and that was kind of the out of the ordinary for people to do that.
Well, yeah, and now, I mean, the other thing is you go different places, and then you're running into people everywhere that you played with, right? Or parents. Everything's got a strength and a weakness. There is a part of that that's enjoyable. Like you get to meet people outside of your circle, outside of your community to create another one. So when you were playing, my guess is working on the mental game, mental fitness, mental toughness, like that wasn't talked about much, right? How do you see that that's changed over the years?
My first couple of years at Duluth, I actually took a psychology class, which kind of opened my mind to even like there was a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I started thinking about, like visualization and that kind of stuff. And then we actually had a guy that would help us mentally, and that would be, we'd turn the lights off and lay on the floor. And it was good. It was really a kind of like for me, an eye opener of like, oh, this is something I like. And I've always kind of paid attention to it. But that is, that was kind of few and far between it. Nobody really talked about it. Like a lot of the areas of life, even there, psychology is a little bit scary to people, but in the NHL or in the higher level hockey, I think it's changed tremendously. In Chicago, we have 2 or 3 guys that help us. We have one that works in Rockford, and we have 2 that help us in Chicago that guys can, feel comfortable and kind of build a rapport with. And I think it's super helpful. Some guys need more, some guys need less, and a lot more about it than I do. I mean, you're in that world, but I think it's great to have that asset, and I think it's super important.
How have you helped players with that part of the game?
So that's like, I think in college, you probably have to do a little bit more of it because, there's not a guy that's there all the time. Like even when you're in Duluth, right? Like if we found that there's a little bit more problem than we're maybe capable of talking with or that kind of stuff, we would probably try to get a hold of you and see if it's something that they could, talk to you about. Other than that, like, when I get to the pro level, I think there's the aspect of those guys are there and we do a lot of the coaching, and obviously I'm aware of it, how things affect them mentally. But the NHL is really about winning. So we're literally more callous to it, right? Like at the end of the day, we have to try to win. Obviously we want the best for our players. And then, if we see something that's off or what doesn't seem right, I think that would be a conversation that I would have with maybe the psych guys and say, if something doesn't seem off, I don't know if you want to check with them and that kind of thing, and let them, like anywhere, someone that's better at it than me, I'd rather have them deal with it and have them get the right help. And I'm talking more probably off the ice stuff. On the ice stuff, like confidence always comes up to be a huge one, and you can hear it all the time. Like, I don't have any confidence. I'm not playing with confidence. Coach doesn't give me any confidence. And some of these things are hard to deal with because sometimes you're just not the player that we can give you the extra ice time. And then there lies the confidence, right? So it's always a tricky slope.
Well, yeah. And I often talk with players about confidence is not just an emotion. It's a skill and an emotion. And you got to figure out like how you're going to build it. Because in my view, it's not the coach's job to give a player confidence. And they can't, because you can't buy it at Amazon, right? Like, you got to figure out how to do that. I also think at the higher levels, what I've seen is that you get guys that have, up until they get there, have been the guy, right?
Yeah.
So how do you learn how to play with confidence when you only get and how are you effective if you only get 6 or 7 shifts a game? Right.
Yeah. And so I've learned to deal with that as a coach, because I want guys to have success and play at the best level that they can play off.
Yeah.
And, most of the kids are all great. Like, I'm not choosing one kid over another because I like them more, right? This is a sport where it's ultra competitive and we have to play the guys that are the best adapted to helping us win hockey games. So sometimes it does hurt the confidence. And I get that. And we can talk about it all day long, but it's probably not going to get you more ice time because that's just where we're at. It's a slippery slope, right? It goes both ways.
Now, I can think of NHL guys I've worked with where I'm like, yeah, you can argue with your coach all day long about where you think you should be, but at the end of the day, he has all the power. So figure out what you're going to do if you only get 12 minutes, right?
Yeah, right. Because if he's getting more minutes than someone else is getting more minutes, then I'm going to have the same conversation with that guy. So the conversation doesn't go away for the coaches, right? Like, not everybody can play all the minutes. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that like what you're identifying as a challenge, like how do you do that as a coach? And yet, like, because I can think of situations where I've been in where like the kid will say, well, my mental health suffers because I don't play as much. Well, that's more their problem than it is yours, but you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Right. And I'm fully aware of it. When a guy comes back to the bench, he's not playing a ton and you can tell he's not confident. I try to say good things to him. Like when they do good stuff, I give them good stuff. Like I'm not just sitting there beating them down as much, like it's not, I don't think that's productive. So I try to say good things and say, yeah, that was a good play and blah, blah, blah. And again, I think in some points you need to be very pointed, right? You need to be like, this is, maybe you missed something here, but that's factual, right? That's like, well, this is maybe why you're not playing. But I think when they do stuff well, and the other part we don't do is, like, and I haven't seen it on the bench is you're not getting like, you're this or you're that, or like you don't make it personal ever really. So I don't think I've never seen a coach really do that. Right. Unless they're doing it in the back room where the player has done something they really shouldn't have. So,
well, I've seen that. And I think if you label players with certain traits and they don't believe they're true and you don't give them, like, that speaks to what you're talking about. Like, give me feedback. Like if you say, well, you suck at this, or you're soft or you're selfish, but you don't give me a way out, then your players end up feeling helpless and not knowing what to do. And then they resign you. So.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not productive at all. And it's not helpful as far as moving them forward either. So,
yeah, I would guess that that's something you've seen evolve over your career. Right.
Yeah, for sure. And, it happens probably on every team. You end up with a player that just can't seem to get over the hump when even like, trying to be really good and helpful, but you can only have the same conversation for them so long. And it just becomes a little bit redundant.
Yeah. And in my mind, what I often see happen, I mean, that happens in my office, right? Like we've had this same conversation like 6 times. Like when are you going to do what you need to do? Like you're not doing the things that you need to do to get there. Right. So, yeah.
Then it gets frustrated as a coach, and then it gets like, well, you feel less bad for the guy if he's not able to, if you give them something to work on, they don't work on and they don't change at all. It just becomes really hard. It becomes difficult, and that's probably where everybody gets a little uncomfortable on teams.
Yeah, that makes sense. What values have stayed constant for you throughout all the levels of hockey you've coached and played?
Honesty, integrity. Obviously, in any sport, I think it's just a given that you need to work your butt off because otherwise, someone else is going to work harder. And if you're not working as hard as you can, you're not accomplishing as much as you can. I just don't think and hockey is kind of a working man sport. So that's a no brainer. And, being an honest teammate, being unselfish. I think I love players that will move the puck, get it back and do things that are a little bit out of their character to help the other team and help the team win. Those are probably my biggest.
What would you say the biggest life lesson you learned playing hockey or coaching?
Biggest life lesson is I just be able to fight through crap, right? I think you just expect that things that aren't going to always go your way, and how are you going to deal with them? No, and a lot of times maybe nobody really cares. I mean, people say they care sometimes, but I mean, they do. Don't get me wrong. I know people care, but at some point, like whining and complaining about stuff doesn't seem to get you anywhere. So pull up the bootstraps and let's go.
Okay. Well, anything else like that you think either my young players or the parents, like any other wisdom you'd like to impart to any of those people about moving to the next level or getting through juniors or any of that?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I think just having a goal and really working for it, but not, just being willing to work. Like, I think you can accomplish anything, whatever avenue that goes in life. I think if you're willing to do more work than the next guy, you're going to have success, honestly.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks for joining me. I really enjoyed the conversation. You were a great guest, and I knew you would be. That's why I texted.
Yeah, right. I don't know about that, but I got a lot of respect for you. I appreciate what you do, and thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Have a great day.